What's up, Arjun?
Nothing much. I'm here. Really excited to record this podcast with you. I know it's been a few months in
Yeah,
the pipeline. I know you
yeah.
reached out, and I obviously knew of humans of Indian football years ago. So, yeah, excited to be here.
Well, to all our listeners, if you thought if I forgot my manners, I haven't. I was just too happy and comfortable because he's in the studio with me. And as you must have always heard me say when I have guests in the studio, it's a different level of comfort and
Hmm.
fun and ease that I get into.
Mm-hmm.
So, hence the start was very breezy, and you thought, okay, did Siju
Yeah.
forget her manners? I haven't. You are listening to the Totally Indian Football Show with me, your host, and I have with me Arjun Kalra. And it's one of those episodes where I don't have any notes, I don't have any book.
Mm-hmm.
I actually opened my diary. I have a notebook and I scribbled saying, okay, this is my title, like,
Hmm.
whoever the episode is and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, why do I need the book? I'm just gonna have a chit
Yeah.
chat with Arjun and it'll be fine. I don't need notes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Arjun, it's all yours now. You have to tell us what do you do and
Okay.
all the fun stuff that you've done in the past and
Yep.
what does it look like for you in the work terms. And yeah, it's the episode is all about for us to get to know you
Mm-hmm.
a little more. So go for it.
Okay. So I am basically a sports content creator slash filmmaker, I would say. But it wasn't always like that. So I started off with photography, then I was interested in films. I've been an Arsenal fan since I was 2004, 5. And then as I grew up, I did courses, bachelor's in media studies. And then I just decided to merge both my passions for filmmaking and sports. So now I do sports content apparently. But I wouldn't want to tie myself down to that. My next goal is to make like a food documentary or do something wildlife related. So yeah, I would say I'm a filmmaker, but with an inclination towards sports, and that's what my work experience has been the last 5 6 years. Starting with at an NGO in Delhi called Football Link, and then ESPN Bombay, ESPN Bangalore, then Engage. So I've pretty much seen like the journalistic side, the agency side, and now that I'm in London now, so I've completed my MA film last year. And then just freelancing, got a bunch of rejections because it's so difficult to get land a job in London. Uh, but the fact that I had a lot of experience, especially working with clubs based in UK. So yeah, recently I worked with FIFA for the FIFA Women's World Cup. So I did a bunch of pre-tournament content 2 months before, and then they said, okay, why don't you come on board as a filmmaker on ground? Because they knew I don't just want to produce stuff and work remotely. They knew I wanted to shoot and edit and find stories, so that's what I did. So I was there for 35 days, but only in Sydney. So I saw all the matches that happened in Sydney. I was there at the finals. It was quite interesting working with FIFA. But yeah, made some good memories and worked with some of the best people, best journalists from around the globe, and it was great fun.
I mean, I
Was
was
that too
like,
long?
it wasn't too long. I was just like, I just want to say, I'm just like short of my vocabulary needs to really highly improve because I'm just stuck with two words, wow and amazing, right?
Yeah.
So, but listening to that, I'm like, it's just wow, like, because I think it was also during the World Cup time that we connected. I think it was
Yes.
when you posted about that you'll be working with. And in fact, it was the pre-tournament movie that you made. I think that's when I saw your post and we kind of
Yeah.
connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And yes, another plugin for saying I've got guests from LinkedIn. But this went a step ahead of us, following each other's work on Instagram as well.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling my sister that I'm meeting him for the first time, but it feels like we're already friends since some
Hmm.
time now. But let's now kind of dissect from whatever you said, right? How was it like when you said filmmaking is your passion and that's
Mm-hmm.
where you're also inclination towards sports? How did you probably identify that's what you want to do and how, yes, you said you're an Arsenal fan,
Mm-hmm.
probably that's the start of liking
Yeah.
sports, but making content, making stuff, how did that happen?
Mm. So I think, like you mentioned, being an Arsenal fan really, somewhere in the back of my mind, it was there because I didn't just watch the matches. I wanted to see the pre-match shows. There was a show called Nokia Football Crazy, if you remember,
Yeah.
with I don't remember their names because it's so old now.
Yeah,
But yeah, that show was amazing. They had some really good television content.
yeah.
So I would always watch that. Then Champions League shows, and then obviously being an Arsenal fan, I really used to go on YouTube and back then it was called Arsenal Media.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to watch a lot of pre-match and post-match content. So I think somewhere subconsciously was there in the back of my mind that I could do something in sports.
Yeah.
And then once I started photography when I was in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, I was always inclined towards candid photography, like
Mm.
pets, sports,
Got it.
kids, infants. So I did like photo shoots for pets, brands with like kids wear. So I was always around people who were candid, and especially
Mm.
street photography. So then I decided, because I wasn't good at studies, and my tuition teacher told me, just focus on your photography, don't do maths, don't do anything else. So I was like, cool. And thankfully I was privileged enough that my parents were there to support me. So
Mm.
I needed the camera, they got me the
Yeah.
camera. I joined this course called Bal Bhavan in Delhi, which is free. So I learned about photography there, the basics. And then I thought, okay, let's do mass communication, because that's not just filmmaking,
Yeah.
but it's also advertising,
Right.
PR. They teach you the basics. So after doing that, I did audiovisual communication specialization.
Mm-hmm.
So I made some films. They were received very well. So I got the confidence. Okay, I can do filmmaking. So after that, when I went back, after finishing my bachelor's, when I went back to Delhi, during the course, my bachelor's, we had internships. So one of the internships I did at that NGO in Delhi called the Football Link.
Mm-hmm.
So during my time there, they asked me to make some films. So I was like, cool. I made some content that they really liked. Of course, it was very amateurish
Yeah.
because I was like 18, 19 back then, but they really liked the ideas and stuff. So once I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go to Delhi. My college was in Pune. What can I do? Like, I wanted to get the ball rolling. So I was
Yeah.
like, cool, I'll hit those guys up if they're looking for someone. So immediately I got a job straight out of college. I was just like a few weeks here and there, just relaxing. But then I was like, cool, now let's find a job. So once I went there, they gave me a lot of responsibility. Like, okay, we have a bunch of tournaments coming up. So why don't you click some pictures? Why don't you make some videos? And back then, Facebook was the platform,
Of course.
and you got like organic views
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
organic feedback. Now everything is paid. um so I made like a video that sort of went viral in the tournament space in
Mm-hmm.
Delhi. So I made like a quick highlight reel with nutmegs and misses and
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
fights, because it's Delhi. So that kind of went viral, and then they were like, okay, we can expand on this, let's start a YouTube channel.
Right.
So we made some more tournaments. I used some GoPros, so they gave me like full creative freedom. And within 3 months, I was given the title of social media manager. So I was like, cool, this is like growth. 3 months, I'm my boss now. So while I was there, I kind of built my portfolio around sports. And then one day I saw a post on Facebook saying there's an opening at ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa, that's big. Um, so I applied, and it was through some alumni that I had in college. So they put in a word saying this guy is already in the sports space and he's really young, and we
Yeah.
can get him to Bombay. So that's how I landed up in Bombay. So that was my first, I would say my second job. Football Link was my first
Yeah.
job. So I came to ESPN Bombay, where I worked with some of the best cricket journalists, and they
Yeah.
had a thing called ESPN.in as well. So
Yeah.
ESPN Cricinfo and
Got it.
ESPN.in. So
Yeah.
Cricinfo was just cricket,
Yeah.
and I wasn't really interested in all of that, but I still had to do it because that's where the views came in. And I think the turning point at ESPN was when we went for the blind cricket final,
Mm-hmm.
India versus Pakistan. And I went along with the journalist, and the story was supposed to be around blind cricket, how it's played,
Yeah.
what do they use, how do
Yeah.
they see, everything like that. But somehow, because India won, we didn't get access to any of the players, and our story was just up in the air.
Oh.
But thankfully, I was recording the match, so I had
Okay.
some highlights. And somehow we found like a gray area that, okay, we can post these because it wasn't on like Star or something. Not a lot of
Yeah.
people were
Yeah.
watching blind cricket, obviously. So then what I pitched to my producer was, okay, I have the highlights and they're really good. They look good. It's not the television broadcast quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's slightly better. And then so we just compiled everything into 90 seconds, gave the highlights, put some inspirational
Yeah.
patriotic music
Yeah.
before Instagram Reels was there, and we posted it, and it got like 1 million views. A lot of people shared it. I think Harsha Bogle shared it. So I was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
This is my first viral video. And from there, they trusted me with more stories. ESPN.in. We shot with Lakshay Sen, who is now
Yeah.
India's
Yeah.
best badminton player.
Yeah.
Back then he was 16, 17, and I
Yeah.
remember meeting him. So all those people, all those stories that we shot back then, I think really helped me now because I was working with journalists, so I know what sort of questions to ask,
Right.
what research to do. So then from ESPN Bangalore, they called me to Bombay, and then from ESPN, I was kind of done with cricket stuff, and I was always eyeing this agency called Engage
Yeah.
because they were doing some really cool stuff on
Yeah.
YouTube. There was Ankush, and the other guys who were posting some really cool stuff. So they had an opening, and yeah, I got in, and then we worked on content for Dortmund initially. My first few weeks there, we worked on a video with Dortmund. We met Yan Dhanda in Amritsar. We shot with him, and then Chelsea came on board,
Yeah.
so we did a bunch of content for Chelsea. That was the time when we started doing like fan stories. And I mean, the team at Engage was brilliant
Yeah.
because we would, sit together, brainstorm about ideas. And I would say it was some of the most groundbreaking stuff back then
Yeah.
because I see other people doing that
No,
now.
of course. Yeah.
So yeah, we came up with fan stories, fan fest ideas, doing daily content for
Yeah.
Chelsea. Of course, it was geo targeted, but I think bulk of my learning experience was with Engage during that time because we were working so closely with Chelsea day in day out. We shot with Arjun Kapoor.
Mm.
We found influencers. We
Yeah.
shot stories with them. Mortal. We made a TV, well, not a TV show, but a e-gaming show with Mortal, and we still post that on YouTube. I mean, they post that on YouTube. I don't work with Engage anymore. So yeah, after Engage, I sort of decided that I want to study a little more, and because Engage has their main HQ in London,
Yeah.
I decided, okay, why not do a course in London so they can give me part-time work. So day one, when I arrived in London, I had a part-time job, so everything was planned. I did the
Sweet.
course. Engage was there throughout, and then yeah, once the course was done, I was freelancing. And like you said, LinkedIn is such a great tool,
Yeah.
and that's how I came across the FIFA thing.
Hmm.
And most of my work is just through LinkedIn because you can post things
Yeah.
and people
Yeah.
can engage with you. Now that I'm done with FIFA work, I keep getting messages from UK companies who initially rejected me. So yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take a while to reply.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
maybe a while can be a day,
Yeah.
and then yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's get to
Yeah.
work
Please
now.
give me the job.
But that's amazing, right? So now when you started off as, I think all of us initially, as in the creator space, like content creating space, even for me, I have not done any formal education in podcasting or
Hmm.
writing or stuff like that. Like, I think what's common between both of us is the fact that we've learned on the job,
Yeah.
and we've learned from our circle.
People
Yeah,
around us. Yeah.
because we've been, I think, just to say, when you mentioned, when you threw names like ESPN or at Engage for that matter, there were people for sure who were senior, much senior to
Hmm.
us, and I think we learned from there. Like that's
Yeah.
where I can actually say, when I look at my fellow journalists or that circle, the most of them are ACJ graduates and stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I've just done graduation and then out,
Yeah.
been working since then, but I have access to some of the best writers and some of the
Yeah.
best broadcasters, whether it's Sharda Ugra, whether it's Deba Inda, all of these guys,
I
right?
love
So
them. I love
yeah,
Sharda and Deba, and I
yeah.
work so
So
often
so
with
it's
them.
like, and even now for that matter, I mean, he may not be much older to me, but Anirudh from ESPN,
Yeah,
who's
Anirudh
from
Menon.
Bangalore, yeah,
Yeah.
Bangalore. They're such good writers, right? And it's just the fact that I didn't have to pay much to
Exactly.
get to know
In fact,
them.
I was getting paid to
Yeah,
go to shoots with them.
yeah, exactly. So I think, so when you do that, and then now when you decided to do formal education
Hmm.
with a bit more understanding in filmmaking and stuff, how is it like? Because as opposed to just starting off with the education and then coming out and working,
Mm-hmm.
because we've heard people from both the sides that yes, education helps, and then to master what you do.
Hmm.
But even having experience and then doing your studies kind of
Yeah.
also helps, because you have the experience and you have the upper
Exactly.
hand. So how was that like for you?
So because the bachelor course that I did wasn't very hands-on, it wasn't a filmmaking course, it was
Yeah.
a mass communication course.
Right.
But even though my specialization was audiovisual communication, I didn't get to use the big cinema cameras and do a lot of lighting because we were
Right.
still kids, but we made great films.
Yeah.
But then once I got into sports, I completely disconnected from the cinema side of things.
Right.
So I was like, if I can tell these stories which are coming to me, like if I go to a shoot, if I can extract these answers from someone, what if I work on something that is more planned?
Yeah.
That there's a script, there's a narrative, if I can control the light. And in the end, that only helps me when I'm out shooting guerrilla style and
Yeah.
interviewing someone. So I kind of wanted to get back into that scripted space and, have control. I wanted to be a cinematographer, but they didn't have any slots left by the time I made up my mind that I should go. So I was an editor and cinematographer. But even then, I learned so much from that editing experience. Like, some of the films that I edited were not great looking, or some dialogues were really bad, but
Yeah.
because I had all this experience working in not just sports, but when you have like a 20-minute thing
Yeah.
and the client says I need 4 minutes, you somehow learn to let go and not be attached to the
Of course.
content, and you're just
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't give a shit anymore, let me just do what the client wants. So that's what I did in that course. It was very hands on, but ultimately, the plan was to use whatever I learned in the MA filmmaking course coming back to sports. So, using certain camera angles,
Yeah.
using certain lighting techniques, using certain ways to extract something that you want from the person, the athlete, or whoever you're interviewing. So I think I was never gonna do like Bombay, Bollywood, or even Hollywood or
Yeah.
UK ads, because I've seen those. I've been on those sets. I find it not very interesting because I find it kind of fake. Even while making the films, I was like, we're doing like 1 day setup for a 2-minute shot and might not even use it.
Yeah.
So it is that kind of an industry where
Yeah.
you really need to feel for that space. And I feel like deep in my heart, I only feel like that for sports. So I was like, okay, let's continue working in sports, but use everything that I've learned over there.
Yeah.
So I think I needed that course to learn more about cameras, about lighting, because I'd never used on any of the shoots with Engage, ESPN, I never used more than a DSLR. And I really wanted to do that upgrade because once you
Yeah.
use that equipment, you feel like, okay, I can get better footage, I can get
Yeah.
better angles. So I needed that course to learn more hands-on techniques and then use it for my sports experiences. I think was really handy, especially when I was in Australia, because they gave us full creative freedom. And we were sometimes in situations where the story was not really pulling through, but using some editing and some music and footage that FIFA had, because they have great archive stuff.
Yes.
So I sort of learned through all of those experiences, and like the names you mentioned, Sharda, Debayan. So the thing that I learned from them, especially because I was a kid, I used to go with them on shoots. They would ask the questions. I was too shy to ask the questions back then. They would ask all the questions. I would just record side, say, ek angle, and then make a video. So I would like edit a little bit here and there, but there's not much I can do. But then when I saw my video and I read their article, I was like, I'm so like I don't have any talent.
Yeah.
And wow, they caught on to that point. That's how they started it.
Yeah.
My ending was their starting. And I couldn't stop reading the articles. Some of them were really like heartfelt, emotional. They used to notice these things about athletes that जब मैं exposure पे ध्यान दे रहा था, they saw the athlete twitched or something like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of used all those tricks and tips to, sort of use for my own benefit
Yeah.
and on my shoots. So yeah, shout out to writers at ESPN. They really made my career. I might name drop a lot of people throughout, but yeah. And then even at Engage, working with Ankush,
Yeah.
Yudhvir, Johnny Johnson. So yeah, I think I've picked up so many things from these people as
Yeah.
producers, as editors, as content creators, that everything that I do, I always kind of remember. Okay, maybe we should do this. And especially Ankush, because every time I edit now, he used to give me feedback. So I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, Ankush would definitely say, change the music here. So yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's very funny. I mean, even with Ankush, right? We spent so much time in Bombay, but the first time we ever met and caught up was in Bangalore. Is when he
Okay.
moved to Bangalore, and I
Yeah.
often make trips to Bangalore. So that's when we caught up. It's been years now, I think ages.
Hmm.
But I think when you mentioned about back then Engage doing a lot of stuff that now you see people doing, including
Hmm.
us for that matter. Ankush definitely did that, right? It was
Yeah.
that one man army that he was out there wanting to do and stuff,
Yeah.
like especially the match day vlogs.
Hmm.
It was not a common thing in Indian football,
Yeah.
but he made even Cooperage look the most fancy place that you
Exactly.
should be in. And of course, it was one of the
Yeah.
best places. If there are games happening, it is quite intimidating.
Yeah.
But all of that, right? So I think there's definitely pioneers and stuff. And
Hmm.
circling back to Debayanda and Sharda, I think we can all sit here the whole day and talk about the way that they just do their craft, right?
Yeah.
Because I've mentioned it to Sharda, I've got her on my show. And I've told her that one of the articles that she wrote about Tarinama now, like the Nagaland
Okay.
player, right? I think he was the first Indian captain, if I'm not
Hmm.
wrong. It felt like a beautiful written script. I've taken a
Hmm.
printout of it and I've kept it. I'm like, can you make
Yeah.
a movie out of this? Somebody,
Exactly.
please. That's
Yeah.
how, like, in detail. And I mean, that's the whole craft of storytelling, right? I think
Hmm.
we try to capture in, whether for me visually or for you
Yeah.
for me in the audio and you with visually. But
Yeah.
I think we often fall short. I don't think
Yeah.
we can ever match that
Exactly.
craft. But I think the whole point of us having access to these people, I think
Hmm.
that's the whole best part. Now, coming, you were in UK, you were in London. You mentioned you worked with clubs over there,
Hmm.
right? How is that like, and how has did that kind of shape you coming all these years, because you worked in the Indian sports scenario with a bit of
Mm-hmm.
cricket, football, and everything, and then now you're in London, the
Mm-hmm.
most happening place for football,
Mm-hmm.
and of course the other sport as well. But how was that experience? Do you have any eye-opening moment? Were you taken by surprise at few things?
So I think they give a lot of importance to the content that can be created on ground over there, because from India we were just doing geo-targeted stuff
Mm-hmm.
for Chelsea and
Yeah.
other clubs. But when you're there, they really respect your views and your time. I feel like when I was working at Engage or any other agency, I feel like even in advertising, it's so hectic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But over there, they really value your time.
Hmm.
And then they really just want to get the focus right in the first go itself. In India, you can sort of take your time and find your stories and
Yeah.
keep working on them. But over there, it's not much of a difference. But I think the value of time and the quality of content, they really focus a lot on that. So I worked with Global Fan Network, who handle Arsenal Fan
Mm-hmm.
TV, Cop
Yeah.
TV. So this was just 2 months prior to the FIFA gig. So I was like, okay, I'll spend some time there, because I knew at FIFA I would have to spend a lot of time with fans.
Yeah.
So I need to be, accustomed to that environment. How do I
Right.
approach someone? What if someone doesn't want me to film them? Because, in stadiums, people get emotional.
Yeah.
And if they see like an Indian guy like me with a camera and a bib, sometimes they get a little uncomfortable. So I think my experience in UK is that you get to learn to think fast on your feet, because you don't have unlimited amounts of time. They really
Mm.
respect that, 5 o'clock you're done with work.
Yeah.
But whereas at Engage, it's not a bad thing. But sometimes the deadlines were so cut to cut. Like
Mm.
I remember we shot once in Goa. We had to take a flight to Bombay for another shoot for another client. So on the way back, we dumped the footage, Ankush and I, and then on the cab, I was editing. When we were at the airport, he was checking our luggage in, I was editing. On the flight, I was editing. Waiting for the luggage, I was editing. On the cab to the airport, I was editing. Cab to the hotel, I was editing. And then we delivered the video. But in UK, I feel like they're like, it's 5 o'clock, we have to go to the pub. That's it, we're done for the day. So they really value what you bring to the table
I think that's just
instantly.
basic principle that it's not
Yeah.
about Engage or any other.
Yeah, it's
This is
throughout. I
basic
see
principle
my
of the country
friends.
over there, I
Yeah, I
think.
see my friends like really grinding,
Yeah.
hustling,
Yeah.
like 18 hours a day, 14 hours a day. You always have to be available. So that's one thing that I really like. The work ethic in UK is a bit different, and I kind of like that, which is why I'm kind of inclined towards staying over there for a few more years and then maybe come back to India and
Hmm.
help Indian football,
Of course.
hopefully.
Yeah. Now let's come the big 2 month carnival that you were part of, right? The FIFA Women's World Cup. And I think the reason I mean, definitely now when people say carnival, yeah, because of the matches and everything. But I think I was too excited to, even see it's happening in Australia and New Zealand. I think
Yeah,
that for me was carnival itself.
yeah.
Because I'm sure these guys would bring it to the table. They know how to get a sporting activity
Hmm.
buzzing, right?
Yeah.
And there's the crowd over there, especially the Aussies.
Hmm.
So how you did mention that you saw the work online and then that's how you got in touch with them.
Hmm.
Uh, Take us to the process of the entire thing, and of course when you were on ground, the content that you worked, because you just didn't do on-field stuff. You also
Yeah.
captured some wildlife. I'm assuming,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
remember if I remember rightly,
Yeah.
and definitely as you mentioned, the people that you worked with. So
Hmm.
take us through bit by bit.
Yeah. So I got the contact on LinkedIn. It was just a post that, so I make it a point that I follow a lot of people in the industry, even though I might not
Yeah.
engage with their content. But the algorithm on LinkedIn is such that if they like something, you get to see it.
Yes.
So I think it just trickled down that post that they were actually looking for editors for
Hmm.
FIFA who could work remotely. So I was like, fine, perfect. I can be in London, I can go on shoot, and then I can edit FIFA stuff. But when they interviewed me, they kind of realized that I want to be on ground, I want to find stories, I want to capture some emotion. So they're like, come as a filmmaker. And then they also had pre-tournament content that they wanted to produce. So they're like, okay, work 2 months prior. We'll know each other's vibe and what your work is like, and then you can come on ground. But they told me on the last day on the party when they were all really drunk that they saw my work that I did for Chelsea, especially Chelsea women's team. So they really liked the idea that I had some experience working in women's football stories. We did one for ISL as well, which they really liked. And then the other process was they would go through your Instagram. What kind of person are you? Are you
Yeah,
funny? Are you
yeah,
easily, can you easily mingle with people
yeah,
from various cultures? So that's what they really like. That was their process, which I was like, wow, that's a good way to
yeah,
gauge if the other person will fit into the team, because FIFA is a big
yeah.
organization and
It's
there are a
from
lot
across the
of
globe. Yeah,
across the globe. Most of the people were South American, so they were always
right.
talking in Spanish. But then I was so easily, hanging out with them that even though I didn't understand a lot, I was just like one of them.
Yeah,
So the process started through LinkedIn, and when I came on board as a producer for the pre-tournament content, that's when I started talking to them day in, day out. We would joke around, banter, talk about Arsenal and other things going on in London and stuff. Um, so then once I was there on ground, they told me you have full creative freedom. We know we don't want to restrict you to anything. And my base was Sydney
okay.
for 35 days. I was in Sydney, and they said this is the most important team because you're in Sydney, which is the heart of the
Yeah,
tournament, and you get to do stuff not just football related but anything else. Anything else you find interesting, wildlife, any fans, any other story that we can put on FIFA Plus or Instagram. So we had a team of three. It was me as the filmmaker, Emily Collins from US, she was a producer, and we had a content creator called Charlotte Lynch. She does a lot of freelance stuff. So it was three of us. We were told you'd be like a family, you have to have breakfast together. We were in the same hotel, we would spend a lot of time, and we were thankfully we did like vibe a lot with each other, and it was really easy to work with them. So we would find stories like there was a lot of stories which didn't materialize because the teams lost,
yeah,
and then they had to exit the tournament. So FIFA was like, it's a great story, but they're out. So we
yeah,
don't really want to, put them in the spotlight again. But the stories we did find, so we found this really famous candy store in Sydney. They're really famous. They have like 550K followers. So we got in touch with them and they said we could do like a customized FIFA logo candy, which I got for you, by the way.
nice.
So they made the candy and we just did a video with them. So, you just sort of relate everything back to football. Like, what does it mean for them? Because suddenly there were so many people in Australia that there were like influx of people coming to watch the matches, but then they would also go to these candy shops and zoo and all of these. So we asked them, like, what does it mean for you to have the World Cup in Australia? And they were also like, they were just admiring the women's team so much because they put Australian football on the map.
Yeah,
Even though the men's team was great, but this was probably the biggest sporting event happening in Australia. So everyone was like really enthused about talking about the World Cup. So we found this candy story. We went to the zoo. We did the Australian Big Five, the big five
hmm.
animals, the wombats, the koalas. So that was really fun. So the best thing about being in Sydney was that they gave me full creative freedom. So I was like, wow, I need to do
Yeah,
something food related. I want to do something wildlife related. So it was basically like getting paid to do what I wanted. But of course, they had feedback. I got to learn a lot from them. Like the zoo edit that I made was 8 minutes long. They're like, we have player access and we're not putting anything more than 3 minutes. So you can't put a video about five animals, which is like 8 minutes long. I was
yeah.
like, fair. And within like 1 minute, the cut was down to 3 minutes. So I think that's where my experience kind of came
Hmm.
into use. So yeah, we were just like having fun basically in Sydney, shooting with a lot of fans. There was one story that I really wanted to do. So while France was playing Nigeria, I think
Yeah,
one
where
of
they
the
lost.
teams which
Hmm.
they lost.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that was the match. I
Yeah.
saw this one fan. It was written on his shirt, Dom's World Cup journey, and below that he had written all the World Cups he had been to,
Wow.
and last पे लिखा था Australia 2023. So that was his first Women's World Cup. So I was like, this is a story. We need to ask him, especially with FIFA archive, and
Yes,
we could
yes.
make him talk about some of the most iconic moments. He was in
Yeah,
Qatar for the men's World Cup, so we could use FIFA archival footage and create
yeah,
a story around
yeah.
that. So I was with him throughout the match. They scored a lot of goals, um, and then once they were out, my bosses at FIFA were like, so sorry, but we can't do that
Oh,
story anymore.
yeah.
So you sort of learn on the job.
Hmm.
You have to have an eye for certain moments. Like I shot a video of the Colombian fans when they were singing the national anthem and they were crying. So I was like, wow, this is good content. So I like completely zoomed in. You could see a tear coming down. And then they posted that on Twitter. So I like finding these moments. So
Yeah,
that's the definition of what my job was, just find stories, be quick. Turnaround time was
yeah,
really like short, and then just on to the next. But
yeah,
we made it a point, like three of us, me, Emily, and Charlotte, that okay, this is probably the biggest project of our life, but we need to have fun. So we went to the beach, we had a bunch of candy, we met Australian wildlife, we shot with some local clubs about derbies
yeah,
in Australia and what local players in Australia, how they look up to Sam Kerr and
yeah,
what the tournament means to them, and having a role model finally. And then also a lot of other stuff going behind the scenes in Australia, because it sort of brought the country together. They were having a difficult time
yeah,
prior to this, but everyone spoke about how 75,000 people in a stadium
yeah,
to watch a women's game, and it was loud. It was
yeah.
loud. But yeah, it was great fun. One of the best days, best projects I think I will probably ever work on. So yeah, that was my time in
Mm.
Australia.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned about it's all about capturing these moments, I remember just recalling when I interned my first internship ever, and I my whole introduction to the world of journalism or
Hmm.
whatever, like sports journalism. I remember my editor at Hindustan Times, where I interned, Sanjeev Samyal, say that okay, now you're going out there to cover a game.
Yeah.
So I started off with the MDFA. Back then it was MDFA, the local leagues that
Hmm.
happened here. He's like, keep your ears, nose, eyes always open, not just on the game, but
Yeah.
literally
Everywhere around.
around the surroundings,
Yeah.
and you're not, firstly, he told me you're not going there as a fan now. So you need to
Hmm.
be
It's
a
so
bit more,
difficult.
yeah.
It is so difficult.
Now you can get just carried away with what's happening,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think these moments really are when you actually look around, is when
Yeah.
you're out on the ground. That's why I always enjoyed going to watch a game rather
Hmm.
than watching on TV, because you get to know a little bit more. And if you're a
Yeah.
writer or if you're a videographer, it comes into that, what your final output,
Yeah.
all of those things. Like you
All the
mentioned,
time.
when you saw Sharda or Deba and talked to them, you were focusing on something and they
Yeah.
caught something else, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the whole part here as well.
Hmm.
But I think with what even the Aussies have done, I think there was one video where the women's team were walking by, I think
Hmm.
from somewhere, probably after lunch or something, and
Hmm.
this whole crowd just sitting in pubs or cafes, the way they cheered them on, and
Yeah.
that's something I would love to see in India.
Absolutely.
Like some players walking by and everyone
Yeah.
else hooting around because
Yeah.
they are the players out
Hmm.
there, kind
I
of a
think now
thing.
they get recognized.
Yeah.
I know because I've seen Gurpreet Singh Sandhu outside in Bangalore one day, and I saw people were
Yeah, in
stopping
Bangalore,
him
yes. I
in
mean,
Bangalore
with the
because
crowd, because
craze
also
is
the
there.
club, or the club is done to engage with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
With the audience. So
Hmm.
that's definitely there. But I think when Mumbai being a vast, it's a country in itself. So I
Yeah.
think it'll take some time for it to happen here.
Yeah.
But yeah, now coming to you, like you mentioned, I think you're saying that this is the best project that you worked with.
Hmm.
What's ahead for you, and what's, like you mentioned, yes, food and wildlife, and I want to tell
Hmm.
you, plug in right here, count me in whatever possible way,
Yeah.
because food, I think we'll talk after the recording
Yes.
as well, what I have intention with food.
Yeah.
But so what's upcoming for you? Are you heading back, and what's it like, and any projects that are lined up? You also mentioned before the recording that there were a few people that you reached out to while you were in London who rejected you, but things are coming back.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So basically, after graduating from the MA film course, I had 3 months of no work, but I was applying every day. No work, when I say no work, is like no full time work, but I work as a photographer. So one day I would be clicking pictures at a 6 year old's birthday party. Next day I would be at Emirates Stadium shooting something with the fans. You have to do all of that to pay the bill, especially in London. So that was 3 months of that, but I was applying to so many jobs every day, like 10, 15 jobs every day because there were vacancies, but next day rejection. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we can't, offer you a job, but we would love to stay connected. Initially, it shattered me because I was
Of
like,
course, yeah.
"Tu janta nahi main kaun hai? I work with these guys. Like,
Yeah,
I fit the bill. Like, I tick every box."
yeah,
But then you sort of get used to it. But that's the thing. You don't give up because if you face rejections, especially in sports content, because it's very saturated
yeah,
around the globe. I
yeah.
wouldn't say just in India, but even in UK, there's so much competition. Like, why would they pay someone who's not from UK, who
Exactly.
doesn't exactly get their culture and
Yeah,
references, even though I do? But why wouldn't they just invest in someone who lives like 10 minutes from the office or
true.
doesn't need to be sponsored eventually? So I kind of understood what they said. But during those 3 months, I kind of worked on my portfolio, kept updating my show reel, kept reaching out to people, made a website, worked on my CV. So you can't get like too bogged down that shit, no one's giving me a job. I might just go do something else, which is totally okay. A lot of my friends in London are doing hospitality, working in
Yeah,
other stuff, which is not really the industry that they would want to work in, but you have to do something before you eventually
get there.
land the
Yeah,
first gig or the dream gig. So first 3, 4 months were a little difficult because I was doing odd things here and there, just editing something remotely. I was doing something for Engage India remotely, which was just like content QC,
mm-hmm.
just quality check, give feedback and stuff. So that was really good of them to think of me.
Yeah,
So jobs here and there, but once the ball started rolling, like I got through the first round. Initially, it was just rejection, like straight up. Unfortunately, in this case, we can't give you anything. But then, okay, second round, third round, I interviewed with IMG Media, which does Premier League.
yeah,
And that was my dream job
yeah.
because I had worked for Chelsea, Arsenal, a lot of these clients on a club level, ISL club level. Everything was very geo targeted. My goal was to do global content.
Hmm.
On Facebook, you used to see the settings button
Yeah.
for any
That.
geo targeted
Yeah.
content. And I was like, this can go viral. Why can't
Yeah.
we make this global? Like one of the stories we did for Chelsea was the Chelsea nanny one,
Mm-hmm.
which she watches matches with her
Yeah. Yeah.
grandson. That kind of went viral on Facebook. We somehow convinced Chelsea to post that globally and got like 1.5 million views organically back then.
Hmm.
So I wanted my content to have that globe
Yeah.
and not the settings button. So I
Yeah.
was like, fine, I'll do something on a global scale. So then once I started getting to the Premier Leagues and the West Hams, which is the club, so then they started, telling me that okay, you're really good. And then all of them, I reached the final stage, like Premier League, I reached the final stage of interviews. Then they said, we just had to go with someone who has more experience at a club level.
Hmm.
And then I understood that they went with that person, but I was like, that's the next step for me. So if
Yeah.
no one gives me a chance, how will I take that
Exactly.
step? And similarly with West Ham, I was in the final 3 or 4 candidates. They made me make a PPT around a presentation. They gave me a campaign idea, so I had to design the campaign
Mm-hmm.
because there it's not just you shoot and edit. You have to come up with the concept,
Yeah.
conceptualize it,
Yeah.
execute it, finance it, find the budget for it, pitch it, get it approved, get it published, everything.
Hmm.
India mein you have like people for every small thing. Like this guy will write copy,
Mm.
this guy will do edit. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
It
think I've,
was
I've done that all, what you just
yeah.
mentioned, but yeah, I get it. At a
Yeah.
proper agency, maybe
Proper
yes.
agencies, they will have people
Yeah.
doing a
A
lot of
team, yeah,
things.
yeah.
And I think that's the case in UK that
Hmm.
you would not just be shooting and editing. You
Yeah.
have to pick the equipment, drop the equipment, charge the equipment, go here, go there,
Basically from
get this,
start
get
A to
that.
Z, jo bhi hai.
Yeah, A
Yeah.
to Z, you're expected to do that, but not too much outside of
Hmm.
that because they
Hmm.
respect your time
Yeah.
and your job
Yeah.
description. बल्कि इंडिया में कभी कभी बहुत ज़्यादा करा लेते हैं, the job description is something totally
Yeah.
different. But then once I started getting to the West Hams and Premier Leagues, I was like, okay, I am good. These people
Hmm.
want me to work with them. Someone from Premier League, the HR, the first round ka interview
Hmm.
leti hai, she's like, I really like you and I
Hmm.
really like what you have in mind and everything. But it's just you have to wait for the right opening at the right time. And I also interviewed with Arsenal initially. I have a friend, Daniel. He's like a big brother to me in UK. He works
Hmm.
with Arsenal as a presenter. He worked with FIFA as well. So he put in a word saying there's this young guy. He's from India. He's really good. He's an Arsenal fan. So I interviewed with Arsenal Cup video lead, and he really liked me. But that time I was still a student,
Hmm.
and the job role was a full time job, which is
Yeah.
legally not allowed.
Yeah.
So I had to let go of that. Then again, Arsenal opening came, but they needed someone with a 3 month clean driver's license. I was like, भाई
Oh.
मैं गाड़ी नहीं ले सकता लंदन में. So I had to let go of that. So a lot of rejections, but once work started coming in, I started feeling a little more confident. And then I worked with Global Fan Network for Arsenal Fan TV,
Hmm.
2 months there. Then FIFA came on board. A lot of tidbits here and there in the middle for influencers. One of the one of the more fun projects I worked with was when IG Mortal
Hmm.
was a gamer, India's number one
Yeah.
gamer. He was working with Engage and Chelsea. They came to London, so I didn't work with Engage or Chelsea. I worked with Mortal.
Directly.
Word in that if you need a camera guy in London, you can ask this guy. So all of us went to Stamford Bridge. He had to make a vlog, so I helped him get some shots and stuff. So those kind of things I did for a while, and then the FIFA gig came, and then yeah. So hopefully I will use all the FIFA, name dropping and using the wildlife footage, the food footage,
Yeah.
stuff like that, along with the stuff that I shot with the fans at the ground, because I wasn't allowed to shoot towards the players because I was non-broadcast camera. So I would always point the camera towards the fans. So I
Okay.
have a lot of good footage that now, once I'm done with this break in Bombay, I will go back and edit. Um, so hopefully I can use my updated show reel and portfolio to work on some projects. But yeah, like I'm on good terms with FIFA. If anything comes up, they said, yeah, if we find something suitable, we'll be in touch. With Global Fan Network, they keep reaching out, this Sunday, this Saturday, we have a tournament, if you can edit something. So I guess freelance is gonna be my way in the
Hmm.
future, because I have a work visa till 2025 in UK. So either I work at a company and I prove myself enough so that they can sponsor me later,
Yeah.
or I work as much as I can freelance, work with a variety of people till 2025, because sponsorship can even happen on the last day. It's not that
Yeah.
I need to prove myself. My work can
Yeah.
help me prove myself to someone, but sometimes, if I work with the Premier League for a year and I really prove myself, they might be willing to sponsor me so that I
Yeah.
can stay back. So that's something that I have to see how it turns out when I'm back in London. But yeah, for till Feb 2025, I will be in UK and hopefully work with clubs like Arsenal, Premier League, West Ham, freelance, full time, anything. Please give me a job.
Nice. Now coming to the, we are almost concluding that. But coming to, yes, as you mentioned, you want to do work either full time, whatever it is. Being an Arsenal fan, what would, if I had to ask you, say, five top content that you would like to do with Arsenal? Doesn't matter this team, whichever team. Okay, just consider Arsenal as a whole. And
Hmm.
what's the content like you when you started watching them until
Hmm.
now? The Invincibles, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
history, right? As you can do a whole movie on Arsene Wenger also, right?
Yeah.
I
There
always
is one.
thought there's something. I always thought Arsenal,
Same.
कुछ
Yeah.
है क्या
Same.
connection like
Everyone.
so that itself has, and then the players that are there, Hondry and all of
Yeah.
those guys. So, what are your top five? Have you like written down somewhere that you would ever want to, if you ever make something of your own, and
Hmm.
if you have to put out five top or best content that you would want to work about
Hmm.
around Arsenal, what would that be like?
So I do have a bunch of ideas that so the thing with me is I get ideas very randomly.
I think we all do. I think
We
all
all do,
content
right?
creators are that way.
Yeah. So I
In our
immediately,
sleep, in our
yeah,
yeah,
when I'm in the
taking a
bus, when I'm
yeah,
having a shower,
exactly.
I'm like, I just freeze and I try to picture that content, and it's been like 20 minutes. I'm just like, no soap, no shampoo, just standing there. But yeah, I do get some ideas. And then I tend to use that in my interviews. Like in West Ham interview, I had a bunch of ideas that I'd written for Arsenal. I was like, I think West Ham would really, do well with this piece of content. Or I think Premier League should do this.
Yeah,
So yeah, there are a lot of pieces of content, like you said, a documentary on Arsene Wenger, which is already done. Stuff with legends, which is already done. I would like to say that Arsenal's media team is one of the best,
yeah,
and that's not me being biased or
yeah.
anything. They don't do anything like trendy. They don't give into
Very
like
lot of culture
algo.
related, a lot
There's
of
a
story
culture, there's
related.
a story, there's
Yeah,
a family
yeah.
feeling, and I get where that comes from, because the guy who interviewed me, his name was Alex. He came from Vice. He was
Oh,
head of Vice. So
makes
their
sense.
kind of content,
Yeah.
you dig deep into a story. There's a certain way they shoot things, and
Yeah.
it's published a certain way.
Yeah.
They kind of build a narrative around things. Like, one of the best things that recently Arsenal is doing now is whenever gets injured, they
Mm-hmm.
make a documentary on his or her return.
The rehab
And
and
then,
everything.
yeah, so Gabriel Jesus got injured,
Mm-hmm.
and the best part is you get to collaborate with Adidas,
Yeah.
because Adidas is the brand.
Yeah.
So you sort of collaborate with Adidas, make it a branded piece, but no
Yeah.
one knows because they're talking about the player's return to
Yeah.
fitness. So it's so well ingrained in that, so subtly
Hmm.
pushed in, that I feel like Arsenal does it really well. But yeah, pieces of content that I would like to do with Arsenal. Should I be giving out my secrets? But yeah, like food related. I mean, every time I see a piece of content that Arsenal does, or some of the other clubs as well, I was like, wow, this is great. I kind of had a similar idea. Like when they did something with Visit Rwanda, that
Yeah.
was one of the sponsors. I don't think there are sponsors
Hmm.
anymore. So they did a content piece because I'd known of Rwanda and the gorillas. There's a walk with gorillas over there where you can encounter the gorillas in wild. I was like, they should do something, but obviously it was planned and everything. So one day when I went on YouTube, the players were actually doing that whole gorilla walk experience, and it was very organically filmed. So those kind of things, I think I would love to do things that are relevant for longer periods of time. Like, in
Yeah.
sports, shelf life is so short.
Yeah.
I would like to make documentaries that are, very global and they have a long shelf
Yeah.
life. So maybe Arsenal come to India and I take them to Purani Delhi and take them to Kareem's, even though they shouldn't be eating that.
Hmm.
So stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then they engage with Indian players or
Yeah.
something like that. Because back then, everything I was thinking, especially at Engage, would somehow relate to Indian
Yeah.
football culture. Everything we did for Chelsea, we had to somehow relate it to Indian
Yeah.
football culture. So stuff like that. I think now that you've mentioned it, I would probably have some ideas today. Um, yeah, I have a lot of things, that some things with Premier League. I love when worlds collide, like football
Hmm.
and food,
Yeah.
football and music.
Tell me about it,
Yeah.
Arjun. We're right here. I can sit for another 1 hour to share
Yeah,
things with, but
exactly.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love coming up with ideas that it's so difficult right now to come up with unique ideas. Like,
Yeah, I think I mean, sorry to budge in there,
yeah,
but the uniqueness here now at this point in this era with the AIs and with the chat
yeah,
GPTs is you.
yeah,
Is the person who is bringing in that unique
yeah.
concept, right? It is everything like, the movie Drishyam talks about,
Hmm.
like the guy, I mean, I'm referring to the Malayalam one, not the
Hmm.
Hindi one, but
Of course.
the way he kind of what he does the entire movie is what he's seen,
Hmm.
right? He's
Yeah.
built a whole movie watching movies,
Yeah.
right? The entire thing is that whatever he does and ends
Yeah.
up plotting and stuff. So we are consuming a lot, right? The
Hmm.
content that comes out, whether it's documentaries, whether it's
Hmm.
whatever kind of video that we watch. I binge watch a lot of chat shows, just for the thing, whether it's movies or
Yeah.
whatever related, just on a drive, just to kind of bounce off ideas. Okay, I can
Yeah.
do this in football and I can do this here and
Exactly.
there. So I think it will never be that, oh, this is the wow eureka moment,
Yeah.
because there's so many people and generations have gone before us, right?
Hmm.
But the uniqueness would be what you are bringing into it, your
Yeah.
eye and your concept, and
Yeah.
that I think that's how I put it out there, because you'll
Hmm.
definitely be like, "Arey, ye itna mast hai, what can I do?"
Hmm.
But the whole point is, yes, you can. That's the whole, you will be the unique factor in that
Yeah.
project.
I know.
Coming back to, I think, the rejections that you meant, probably, I
Hmm.
don't know if this helps you suffice it, but now that you're getting jobs, when you
Hmm.
were talking, I was just trying to understand, and I understood one thing, that nobody rejected you for the work you did or you did not. It was a lot of
Mhm.
circumstantial stuff.
Exactly. That's what I
Right?
told myself
Yeah.
as well.
Because no, it's not about saying letting yourself calm down and stuff, but I think that's speaks a lot of volume, right? Your
Hmm.
work was good. Everybody
Yeah.
wanted to work with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's one takeaway I took. Like, everybody wanted you on their team,
Yeah.
but it was just something else that didn't work around.
Yeah.
Not
There was just one other person who had more
aspect
experience
or
being around players. What I mean, I was like, I wanted to ask them, what do you think? Am I going to be like a fanboy around the players? I've been around players.
Yeah, I think apart from that one statement,
Yeah.
the rest everything was circumstantial. That you
Yeah.
can always say, okay, it's either work related
Yeah.
or maybe
I
not.
mean, no hard feelings, but sometimes you feel like a
Of
little
course,
taken
of
back
course.
because I felt like I really had a really good presentation. I had some really
Yeah.
original ideas. And then when you get the rejection, you're like, wow, there is someone better than me who did something
Hmm.
other than what I thought of.
Hmm.
And maybe they are better suited for the job. And now I do follow that guy on who eventually got the job. And he is good. He's got experience. He's
Yeah.
worked in a bunch of local clubs in
Yeah.
London, around London. So
Hmm.
I guess somewhere it does sort of work out for people because if I got the West Ham job, I wouldn't be able to do FIFA.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
earning as much.
Yeah, exactly. Like so whatever. I think God just plans better things
Yeah.
than we do. So I think credit to him, for that. But Arjun, thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
was lovely getting to know about you. I think the perks that I get as a host of the show is that I get to spend time with my guest off the
Mm-hmm.
recording as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the episode ends here for our listeners,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's what I
Yeah.
absolutely enjoy, right? The perks I get to spend time with my guest. But all in all, I hope you had fun. I
Yes,
hope
this
this
was
was
amazing.
nice.
My first time being in front of a small camera and some good recording equipment
Yeah,
where I'm not working. Like when you
yeah,
said, okay, we have to record portrait, I was like, we should be sitting
yeah,
close. The mic should be here, the mic should be there. But I've consciously tried to cut out from work because last few months were really intense.
yeah,
So I want to take a break. I'm not looking at reels as much.
yeah,
I'm not consuming as much content, just spending time with friends and stuff
yeah.
because that's also really important.
Yeah, of course. To for you to help regroup
Yeah,
and
otherwise it
recoup,
gets so
it's yeah,
saturated,
it
especially with
is.
sport. So you need that break.
Yeah, I think some of our guests do mention there's a camera on, and I know that none of it comes out.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just we figure out when to put it out. But hey, this is an audio show, so I
Yeah.
will make sure you go to an audio platform and listen to the whole episode.
Yes.
But thank you once again, Arjun, for making this.
It's
And
a
I have to tell
pleasure.
my listeners that this episode might not come immediately out, but when we recorded this, the day before was his birthday, and
Still recovering.
so I'm glad that I get to also celebrate certain occasions
Yes.
on the show as well. So happy birthday,
Thank you.
Arjun, and may all your dreams and desires, which are
Yes.
good for you,
Yes.
may that come to fulfill, not what
Thank you so much.
the other way around.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, hopefully this is just a first of the many that we will do. I hope we work together as well at
Yes.
some point. You are way too good for me, but yeah, I'll
Come
definitely try and learn from you.
No. For Indian football, we have to kind of collaborate,
Yeah.
work together. There's no upper niche,
Yeah,
you're in
absolutely.
London, I'm here. Because I think what really united us is Indian football. You
Yeah.
saw my experience there, and I heard of you guys years back, and we did want to work together. This is just how it eventually happened. So
Yeah.
maybe we could do a sponsored show one day,
Of course.
somewhere, get some food,
With food,
get
yes.
some players. Maybe.
Oh, please, you're
Yes.
actually got into my head now because you're speaking exactly those words.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, I know if we don't hit the record if I don't stop the record button, my sound engineer will be like, get done with it, Siju. But I have to shout out to Ajinkya, who's our sound engineer. We've recorded this episode on a Saturday. Usually there are no recordings. He's come down to do this. So thank you so much, Ajinkya. And to everyone at Idea Brews who get to work and who gets our show out there. Thank you so much, guys. To all the lovely listeners, please get onto an audio platform, whichever you listen to. It's all available on all the leading, Apple, Spotify, Binge Pods, Google, wherever you want to listen to it. Please go listen to it. And this is Arjun Kalra, and this was me, Siju, signing off. Thank you so much once again. You were listening to the Totally Indian Football Show. Cheers.